Hey everybody, my name is Paul Eston Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25. Before we go any further, make sure you hit the thumbs up and subscribe for New York Jets content all day, every day. And training camp is finally here. It's been so long, and football is back. And to talk all about it, we bring on a very special guest who's making his debut here on the channel. His name is Mike Kaye. He's the lead NFL reporter for the Pro Football Network. Let's let him grace us with his presence. Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I'm excited. I am elated and ready to go, man. I got to be honest, and you helped us all get ready. You guys can check out the link in the description below. Mike Kaye gave us the top 5 training camp storylines to pay attention to, and there's a lot of intrigue in there. We will get in there, but Mike, I have to start out first with this Jeremy Fowler nugget that has Jet social media going bonkers. In a just kind of a projection article that they put out for ESPN, talking about where will all these teams be 3 years from now. Jeremy Fowler gave a nugget for today's Jets, and he said that they're still looking, quote unquote, to make a splash move ahead of the season. And he was specific that that move would come in the secondary. And when Jet fans start doing the math, the only possible place he could be talking about is the opposite safety starter across from Jordan Whitehead. And then when we start to look at the options that could be available, we're like, Jessie Bates? So with that being said, I guess we have to ask, what is the current situation with Jessie Bates and the Cincinnati Bengals before we even get to the Jets' potential factor here?
Well, just to jump ahead of that, if you talked about a big splash move in the secondary,
yeah,
according to my colleague at Pro Football Network, the Jets just signed former Eagles cornerback Craig James.
Oh, wow,
Woo,
really?
Big news.
Okay, hey, here we go.
So maybe we can talk about him a little bit more in the show, but obviously based on my experience of being an Eagles beat reporter while he was in Philadelphia. But with Jessie Bates is and I wrote this today. I think you linked to it. It's an interesting situation because it depends on how much you value a 1-year pact, because really now that the contract extension deadline for the franchise tag is kaput, the Bengals and no one else and everyone else only has the option to play him for a year, and then you don't know. Maybe you have to use the tag again. But as he's shown reluctance to the tag, do you really want to go through this the next year after you've given up assets for him? It's a difficult situation for an acquiring team because the GM has to say, cool, I'm going to give up a second or third round pick for a safety, a position that's not valued as heavily as corner, a position that's not valued as heavily as defensive end or defensive tackle, for a 1-year kind of prove it on both ends sort of deal. Like if you're trading for him and Jessie Bates doesn't like the coaching staff, or you replace the coaching staff, or there's something that goes on, you don't really have him under contract, and maybe this all blows up, and maybe the team that's acquiring him and the staff that's acquiring him doesn't view safety as views safety more importantly than a potential replacement group would. And so you're doing this dance where it's like, hey, I'm going to invest assets in this guy who is, by the way, a top 10 safety, a phenomenal player. I think at worst, he was the third most important player in the Super Bowl run for the Bengals this offseason, during the playoffs.
Right.
But when you look at the reality of the situation, this dude wants top market money. He doesn't have any leverage. Really, he can put pen to paper with the Bengals, or he can sit out, right? And the team has all the leverage right now. The second the Bengals trade him, he recoups a ton of leverage. It flips because you're not trading a second or third round pick for a 1-year rental. Right. It doesn't matter if you're a contender. It doesn't matter if you're a team trying to be on the come up like the Jets. You're not doing that. Smart GMs do not do that. And so, Bates and his agent know that. And I think that leverage right there, you can renegotiate the franchise tag still. You just can't extend it. So you can give him another deal. Maybe it's that you sweeten the pot by, to get him to agree to go to where he wants to go. Maybe you add some millions to the 1-year deal. Maybe it's that he asked that you can't franchise tag him the next year. That's a red flag, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if you're a GM, it comes into a place where maybe that dampens the value of the asset you're going to send. Now, the Bengals are a team that's known for putting their cleats in the turf, so to speak, and really not rewarding bad behavior. You could talk about the Carson Palmer thing, but they waited that out to the very last second of the trade deadline. And the Cardinals paid up, right? So,
yeah, sure.
Or sorry, the Raiders paid up.
Raiders and then Cardinals, yeah.
Excuse me. Long time.
Yeah.
But look, I think if you're the Jets, who have just invested 3 first-round picks, I mean, they had, 4 picks in the top 45 picks, and all 4 of those guys were slam dunk picks, in my opinion, just based on them being prospects. I love what Joe Douglas did in this draft, and I've been extremely critical of him, even dating back to my time on the Eagles beat. For a lot of the time, the outside image seemed to be where his look on free agency was, hey, I know that guy, and his look on the draft was, hey, that dude put up a lot of really impressive stats. Cool, he should work out. And so I think he took a different approach this year. They were extremely aggressive. I really like their entire draft. Like, I think from top to bottom, they had a top 3 to 5 draft in the league. And that, on paper, that doesn't really matter. But they also had a really impressive free agency as well. I mean, I love the Laken Tomlinson signing. I love that. I like Jordan Whitehead a lot. DJ Reed, I was kind of like, okay, I get it. And then I think you look at what they've done at tight end. They've really made that a competitive group, a group that I think can really ascend. I like Tyler Conklin a lot. I thought he was really underrated in his previous stop in Minnesota. I think when you look at what CJ Uzomah can do, I think he's a special player too. He's part of that Bengals run. He's also tough as nails. Remember, he got injured and came back and played. And look, I think they've set up Zach Wilson really well to compete, not just from the guys on offense and what they brought in on offense, but how they've improved the defense as well. And I covered Robert Saleh in Jacksonville. I know how important linebackers are to him. I think he's got some improvement there. I think, and now experience in the system as well, which is really important.
Right.
And look, I think the pass rush has improved. Jermaine Johnson was my favorite player in this class. I was shocked he fell to the mid to late 20s.
Still shocked. Yeah.
Still shocked. And I think he's a really interesting scheme fit for them. So I think overall, what I'm trying to say here is the Jets have an opportunity to push, right? Like the Dolphins have kind of become a paper tiger over the past 2 years, and that, look, they've got a really talented roster, but they just haven't put it together.
Right.
And then I think you look at the Patriots, and the Patriots are kind of teetering on that. Yeah, they can be a really good AFC team. They're probably not a contender because there's about 6 or 7 teams in the AFC that are better than them.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that extra 7th seed that we've had around since last year or 2 years, I don't know. My brain's all everywhere.
That's okay.
But,
mine.
Yeah, but so since we've had that 7th seed, I think there's a possibility that the Jets could surge. I don't think they will, but I do think there's a possibility that they can catch a wave. And so when you look at that, you're looking at Jessie Bates and you're saying, is he the guy to push this over the middle? Now, here's the thing, though.
Sure, yeah.
And they should learn from their own history here. They traded Jamal Adams for a lot.
Yes.
And it's pretty much set themselves up, right, to have all these great picks.
True.
What's Jamal Adams done for Seattle?
Well, he did break the single season sack record for a DB, so tip of the cap there, Jamal.
Cool,
but besides that, a whole lot of nothing. Yeah.
But like realistically, how much better has he made the Seahawks? Right? You could argue Quandre Diggs has had a bigger impact on the Seattle secondary than he has.
Yeah.
And so I think with the safety position, there's a reason why it's not valued the way it is, because there are certain safeties that transcend the position. There's guys like Malcolm Jenkins who could have played anywhere. There's guys like Earl Thomas who was an absolute ball hawk, but the second he lost his speed and his interest really in football, it fell off. Ed Reed, exactly the same. Really, really great ball hawk, but when it fell off those last couple of years in the league, I mean, well, it wasn't as productive. Listen, Jessie Bates is 25. He's extremely talented, But that gamble is huge because let's say the Jets get off to a rough start and Jessie Bates is like, man, this year is awful. Why do I want to be here? Right?
Yeah.
I think like that's the biggest concern for me. If you're a team like the Jets who's on the come up, it's different for a contender, right? The contender, right. You're going for the dream team aspect. You're trying to, you're just trying to push it over the edge. If you're a team like the Bengals, but like, I think if you're a team like San Francisco, for instance, okay?
Yeah. Sure.
San Francisco feels like they have talent. They got to the NFC title game. They're switching out quarterbacks, but a safety could maybe change things, right? If they feel that way, cool. The Raiders, if they feel like they can catch magic in a bottle because they've made all these big moves and they have $17.5 million salary cap space, I get it. I wouldn't do it personally, but I do understand there are teams that probably do have that hunger for Jessie Bates because he's 25, because of the playoff run that he had, all that stuff. And I know I'm rambling, but I think what's interesting about the Jets situation is they've really been super aggressive. And remember, Joe Douglas comes from under Howie Roseman.
Right.
And he also comes from Baltimore, where they know a thing or two about really good safeties.
Sure.
So I understand the dot connecting here. I do think it could be a big splash move. Again, I wouldn't do it, but I think after years of kind of, playing the slow roll, Joe Douglas has decided, hey, this is the year that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And so I get it. I mean, I get it, but I do think for all the reasons I listed, it doesn't make a ton of sense on paper to do. I don't think it's a realistic move to make.
No, I agree on a lot of senses. That's why it just so jumped out of Jeremy Fowler's report that he said it, because you would think that if, again, Joe Douglas is the one who traded away Jamal Adams, so what he thinks of safeties. And then secondly, they were in on Marcus Williams, who is a free agent, and they said, the money's too high. So now that they're going to turn around and trade an asset or two away and get another guy and then pay him, it doesn't seem to make much sense. But again, it's something to address. But as you said, breaking news here as of recording of this show. Again, former Eagles cornerback and special teamer Craig James is signing with the Jets today after passing a physical per multiple reports. So, Mike, you have a unique history for people that don't know it. On top of your national thing now of covering the entire league, you do have a history with the Eagles, and so does the Jets, for that matter, with the Joe Douglas connection. What can you tell us about Craig James? He seems like a really interesting guy.
So let me tell you this from like a person standpoint.
Sure,
Okay? So Craig's a guy who played at Minnesota. And he transferred to Southern Illinois because his mom had a cancer scare.
Wow.
Just wanted to be around her. He said, this is what I need to do. Played really well at Southern Illinois, played close to home. I mean, he's from Illinois, so it was important to be closer to home. I've spoken to his college coach who raved about him. Really, really good guy. So anyway, what you care about is the football, though. So what I would say is this. He is a guy who can be a special teams demon. He's a very good gunner. He was a special teams captain actually for the 2020 season before he got injured.
Oh, wow.
So he started off as a member of the Vikings, played some special teams there, got waived, eventually landed with the Eagles in 2019. Played a lot of special teams. He's the guy, though, what you might remember him from. The Eagles played the Packers on a Thursday night in Green Bay, and he knocked a ball loose at the end of the game that would have been a touchdown for the Packers. Instead, it was intercepted by Nigel Bradham.
Yeah.
Really cool finish. The Eagles won in an upset. That's kind of his claim to fame. Played mostly special teams and limited action before he got injured in 2020. Last year, he was on with the new staff. He was on the practice squad throughout the season, was never elevated, which is interesting because the Eagles went out of their way to add young corners. They traded Zach Ertz for a 5th-round pick and Tay Gowan, who was a 6th-round pick that year. They traded for Kerry Vincent, who at the trade deadline, who was a 6th-round pick that year. They had will they, won't they with Mac McCain, an undrafted corner who was bouncing on and off their roster and the Broncos roster all season. They drafted Zach McPherson from Texas Tech in the 4th round. So he was a guy that was kind of facing an uphill battle. They signed 3 undrafted corners this year, as well as brought in James Bradbury, the former Pro Bowl cornerback from the Giants. It just seemed like he wasn't on the coach's favorite list. It was going to be a massive uphill battle to win that job. He gets waived right ahead of training camp, ends up with the Jets where he's going to get opportunities. This is a lot like the Nate Herbig signing, in my opinion, where he's a guy who can kind of fit in, play a few different roles. He can play nickel. He can play outside. He did get some starting experience with Philadelphia. Obviously, it's been a while since he really played. But I think he's a guy that if you really, try to get the best out of him, he'll show up. So, again, good guy off the field. He's going to be good in the locker room if those locker rooms are open. But yeah, really good special teams player. That's the way I would look at it. He's probably going to be your 4th or 5th corner if he makes the team.
All right, beautiful. All right, keep an eye out there again for Craig James. So we get to Jets training camp, which, by the way, starts officially in full earnest next week, along with all the other NFL teams for that matter. Mike, before we get you out of here, a couple of rapid-fire ones based on your article with a lot of the training camp storylines. One of them is the Mekhi Becton George Fant thing. George Fant is entering the last year of his deal. Mekhi Becton, obviously, there's been a lot of questions there, so the Jets are kind of in a weird place, whether they just pay Fant proactively or they let him play this out or what they do from that decision. Do you know anything on the George Fant contract front? Is there anything cooking there, or have you heard anything from that perspective for the Jets?
I know my colleague Tony Pauline from Pro Football Network has done a lot of reporting on it. I haven't heard any updates as far as the contract's concerned. I think the way Jets fans should kind of look at this, and this isn't a report, this is just my feel for it. If Fant gets the contract extension, I wouldn't be shocked if he's on the left side. You know what I mean? I think they've kind of left these 2 tackle positions kind of open-ended and not said one guy has the job or whatever. I think there's purpose for that. I actually think that's the right way to do it. I think you want guys competing. I think you want to cross-train both tackles to see where they can play and who fits best. And so it's interesting. I mean, obviously Becton's getting a lot of heat out of that building. There's been a lot of reports, even starting with Pauline. Pauline had something, I think, like New Year's Day on him. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
What do you think of Zach Wilson? I know a lot of Eagles fans were hoping that the Jets were going to somehow mess it up when they was doing all the trading and whiff-waffing in that draft, so they could perhaps end up with Zach Wilson maybe. What do you think of him heading into year number 2? You mentioned it earlier. You think the Jets did a pretty good job putting a piece around him?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've set him up to succeed. I think he's in kind of the same position as Jalen Hurts, right? Well, not so. Right. For Jalen Hurts' success last year, he's not a first-round pick,
right?
And I think that gives Zach kind of the leg up in that aspect. But I think when you're looking at it, both teams have surrounded these young quarterbacks with top-tier talent and improved talent, and both of them need to be significantly more accurate. That is both their problems are quite similar. Both of them have great mobility. They're both great athletes. They're both solid leaders. They both have really good temperaments. But I think for Zach Wilson, really, I mean, it really comes down to accuracy and vision. And I think he needs to cut down on turnovers. Obviously, that touchdown to interception ratio needs to be much better. But I think accuracy is what we're talking about. And I know coaches have said he's accurate, blah, 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 blah. But he's got to have a better feel in the pocket as well. And I think that's something that Jalen Hurts also needs.
All right, last one before we get you out of here was one of your training camp storyline. Again, your point was 3 first-round picks need to get off to a fast start for the Jets. Again, they had 3 plus Breece Hall at the top of the second round, who you could even consider his own first-round pick. On NFL Network earlier today, they said the key to the Jets making the playoffs, if it was going to happen, is those top 4 picks need to be stars. They need to be immediate impact guys. Is that somewhere where you lean coming off of, again, your training camp article, which people could find in the description down below?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this really needs to be this offseason really needs to be an oil change for this franchise, right? Like you got the used car.
Yeah.
Robert Saleh bought a used car. It really needs an oil change. And they finally got the oil change. And I think with these 4 young guys, these could be pillars for this franchise. And I think they pick the right guys, in my opinion. I think Sauce is going to be special. I think Jermaine Johnson's terrific. I think he's going to be a steady contributor throughout. But I think when you look at Garrett Wilson, who we haven't even talked about,
right?
I think he has a very high ceiling. I think he and Jahan Dotson have the highest ceilings of any of the wide receivers in this class. And I think Garrett Wilson's going to be a player for a really long time.
And by the way, Mike, let no one forget, you joined my radio show back before the draft. I don't know if you remember this, but we said, who's the guy? Who's the guy that's not going top 10? But, like, you know, you think he's going to be pretty good. I remember you before anyone else that Jahan Dotson ends up going, obviously, I think it was 16th overall, ended up to Washington as a guy you really like. So, again, that Mike Kaye guy, not too shabby. You see the handle right there in front of him, at Mike_E_K. Mike, we're going to have to do this again during training camp to catch up. You're doing great work for the Pro Football Network, my friend. Thanks for checking in.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, there he is. Mike Kaye joining us here on youtube.com/